That night, the richest man in the Hamptons was drowning, while 100 powerful guests laughed just a few feet away. Champagne glasses were raised. Music played. Deals were being whispered between politicians and CEOs. And beneath the sparkling blue water, a paralyzed billionaire was sinking, alone, unseen, helpless. The only person who noticed? A 7-year-old girl, the daughter of a house cleaner. What she did in the next 60 seconds didn't just save his life. It would tear open secrets, break a powerful family apart, and change the fate of both the rich and the poor forever. If stories about courage, family, and second chances touch your heart, take a moment to subscribe and join our community. Now, let me tell you how it all began. The Caldwell estate stood like a kingdom on the Long Island coast. 20 acres of waterfront land. White stone walls. Perfect gardens. A mansion so large it needed a staff just to keep it quiet. Its owner, Ethan Caldwell, was a man who had built his fortune from nothing. A tech genius who turned one software idea into a billion-dollar empire. But success had taken its price. 2 years earlier, a car accident had shattered his spine. Now, at 45, Ethan Caldwell ruled his empire from a motorized wheelchair. That summer afternoon, the mansion was alive with celebration. The Olympic-sized pool shimmered under the sun. Powerful people from New York's elite gathered around it, laughing, drinking, congratulating Ethan on his newest acquisition, a revolutionary artificial intelligence company that would make his power even greater. From a distance, Ethan watched them. His gray eyes were sharp, calculating, but there was something else there too. Loneliness. His wife, Vanessa, moved easily through the crowd, elegant and flawless, greeting senators and investors like a woman born into wealth. Their 12-year-old son Parker was nowhere to be seen. The boy had learned early that his father's world was built on pressure, performance, and silence. Ethan adjusted his chair closer to the edge of the pool, trying to read the lips of 2 executives speaking privately nearby. Business never stopped, even at his own party. But in his focus, something small slipped from his lap. The remote control for his home system. He leaned forward to grab it. Just a little too far. The chair shifted. For one terrifying second, he felt the balance go. Then gravity took him. The wheelchair tipped forward. And Ethan Caldwell fell into the deep end of the pool. The shock of cold water hit like a wall. His heavy motorized chair dragged him down instantly. His legs, useless since the accident, gave him no chance to fight. Above him, sunlight rippled through the water. Above him, people were laughing. No one saw. Panic filled his chest as water rushed into his lungs. The man who controlled companies, politicians, and fortunes was now helpless, powerless, invisible. And he was sinking. On the far side of the pool, near the service entrance, a small girl sat quietly on the ground. Her name was Hannah Thompson, 7 years old. Her mother, Marie, worked inside the mansion as a cleaner. With school closed for the summer and no one to watch her, Hannah had been told to sit quietly, stay out of sight, and not touch anything. Poor children in rich places learned early how to become invisible. But Hannah noticed things. She noticed the way the water suddenly rippled. She noticed the empty space where the man in the wheelchair had been. She noticed that no one else noticed. The music kept playing. Glasses clinked. Powerful people laughed. Hannah stood up. For a second, she looked around, waiting for an adult to react. No one did. The girl dropped the pastry in her hand and ran. Her small sneakers slapped against the stone patio. Without slowing down, without thinking, without fear, she jumped into the deep end. The water swallowed her bright yellow dress as she kicked downward. At the bottom of the pool, she saw him. The rich man. His eyes wide with terror. His arm trapped under the heavy wheelchair. He was barely moving. Hannah grabbed his shirt and pulled. He didn't move. He was too heavy. For a moment, fear hit her. But then something stronger took over. She swam to his trapped arm and tugged with everything she had. It came free. Then she wrapped her arms around his chest from behind, and kicked, harder than she had ever kicked in her life. Her lungs burned. Her muscles screamed. But she didn't let go. Because to a 7-year-old heart, it was simple. A man was drowning. And she wasn't going to let him die. They burst through the surface. "Help!" she screamed. "Help us!" For a few seconds, no one moved. Then the music stopped. Silence spread across the party. All eyes turned. A tiny girl, holding a grown man above water. "Oh my God, that's Ethan!" Vanessa screamed. Chaos exploded. Security guards jumped into the pool. Phones came out. People rushed forward. But Hannah stayed where she was, shaking, exhausted, still trying to keep his face above the water. Her mother reached the edge, pale and trembling. "Come here, baby," Marie whispered, pulling her out and wrapping her in a jacket. On the pool deck, Ethan Caldwell lay motionless as CPR began. His son Parker stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, watching strangers try to bring his father back to life. 3 minutes later, the ambulance arrived. As the paramedics loaded Ethan onto the stretcher, his eyes opened for just a moment. Confused. Searching. And then they stopped. On Hannah. Something passed between them. Recognition. Gratitude. Something deeper. Something neither of them understood yet. Then the doors closed. The sirens wailed. And the richest man in the Hamptons disappeared down the driveway. Hannah stood beside her mother, dripping, shaking, suddenly very small in a world that had just started looking at her. She didn't know it yet. But saving that man had just changed her life. And before the night was over, people would start asking a question that would shake the Caldwell family to its core. What really happened at that pool? If you're listening, tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were that little girl? Because the next chapter of this story is where everything begins to unravel. The party didn't end the way anyone expected. Within an hour, the music was gone. The champagne tables were cleared. Luxury cars rolled quietly down the long driveway as New York's elite left with hushed voices and uneasy expressions. In a place where image meant everything, something uncomfortable had happened. A powerful man had nearly died. And a poor child had been the only one who saw it. Behind the mansion, in a small staff break room that smelled faintly of detergent and coffee, Marie sat beside Hannah, holding her close. Hannah's wet hair had been dried. Someone had found her spare clothes from a staff locker. But her small hands still trembled. "Mom," she whispered, "is he going to be okay?" Marie kissed the top of her head. "I think so, baby. You saved him." The words sounded simple. But Marie's heart was pounding. She had worked in the Caldwell house for 3 years. Quietly. Carefully. Never drawing attention. In homes like this, people like her survived by being invisible. And now her daughter was the center of everything. Her phone buzzed again and again. Messages from other staff. A video already spreading. Someone had filmed the moment Hannah came up from the water. Marie felt fear settle in her chest. Attention could change lives. Not always for the better. The door opened, and Sandra Powell, the Caldwell family's executive assistant, stepped inside. She looked calm, but there was tension behind her eyes. "Marie," she said gently, "Mrs. Caldwell has returned from the hospital. She'd like to see you and Hannah." Marie stood slowly. "How is Mr. Caldwell?" "He's stable. The doctors say he'll recover." Sandra hesitated, then added quietly, "They're calling what your daughter did a miracle." Hannah looked up when she heard that word. A miracle. No one had ever used a word like that for her before. Sandra led them through the silent mansion. The same halls Marie cleaned every morning now felt different. Staff stepped aside. Some smiled at Hannah. Others whispered. For the first time, Marie felt what it was like to be seen. They entered Ethan's private study. Vanessa Caldwell stood near the fireplace, no longer dressed for a party. Her makeup was smudged. Her posture still perfect, but the control she usually carried had cracks in it. Their son Parker sat quietly in a chair, watching Hannah with curious eyes. "Marie," Vanessa said, her voice softer than usual. "And Hannah." Marie nodded politely. "We're very relieved Mr. Caldwell is stable." Vanessa stepped closer. Up close, her hands were trembling slightly. The doctor said if Hannah hadn't acted so quickly. She stopped, swallowing. "We owe your daughter everything." Hannah pressed closer to her mother, shy under the attention. Vanessa turned to Marie. "The media already knows," she said. "A billionaire saved by a housekeeper's child. By tomorrow morning, reporters will be everywhere." Marie's stomach tightened. "We don't want attention," she said quietly. "Hannah just did what anyone would do." Vanessa shook her head. "No," she said honestly. "No one else did anything." For a moment, the room fell silent. Then Vanessa took a breath. "When Ethan woke up," she said, looking down at Hannah, "the first thing he asked was, 'Where is the little girl?'" Hannah's eyes widened. "He wants to thank you personally when he comes home tomorrow." From the corner, Parker spoke for the first time. "Dad never thanks anyone." His voice wasn't rude, just factual. Vanessa shot him a warning look, then turned back to Marie. "There's something else we'd like to discuss," she said carefully. "Ethan's doctors believe emotional support will help his recovery. Your daughter seems to have connected with him." Marie felt a quiet alarm rise. "What are you asking?" Vanessa spoke gently, but there was calculation behind her words. "A few afternoons a week. After school, Hannah could spend time with him. Read to him. Talk with him. Children have a way of reaching places adults can't." She paused. "The compensation would be generous." Marie's expression hardened. "Hannah isn't for hire," she said firmly. "She's a child." Vanessa blinked, surprised. "I didn't mean it that way," she said quickly. "But Ethan hasn't connected with anyone since his accident. Not me. Not Parker. Not his friends. Whatever happened in that pool, something changed." Silence filled the room. Then Hannah spoke quietly. "Is he sad?" The question stopped everyone. Vanessa looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," she said finally. "He's been very sad for a long time." Hannah nodded. "I could read to him," she said. "I'm good at reading." Marie looked down at her daughter, surprised by her gentle certainty. Vanessa retrieved an envelope from the desk and handed it to Marie. "This is our offer. Take time to think about it." As they turned to leave, Parker suddenly stood and walked toward Hannah. He was taller, older, awkward in the way children become when they grow too fast. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for saving my dad." Hannah gave him a small smile. "You're welcome." Later that night, in their small apartment above a hardware store, Marie sat at the kitchen table long after Hannah had fallen asleep. The envelope lay open. The numbers inside didn't feel real. Money that could change their lives. Better schools. Medical care. Maybe even a small house one day. But Marie's hands were shaking. Because deep down, she knew something. Rich families didn't offer kindness without purpose. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Hampton's billionaire saved by housekeeper's daughter. Marie looked toward the bedroom where Hannah slept peacefully. "What world have we stepped into?" she whispered. The next morning, a black SUV arrived to take them to Southampton Hospital. Hannah held a book in her hands. Her favorite story about a brave knight and a dragon who became friends. Inside the private hospital room, Ethan Caldwell looked smaller somehow. No suit. No power. Just a man in a hospital bed. But the moment Hannah walked in, his eyes changed. Bright. Alive. "My little rescuer," he said softly. "Come here." Hannah walked to his bedside without fear. "I brought you a story," she said. "So you feel better." Ethan took the book from her hands. And as he looked at the small girl standing beside him, something inside him shifted. Something that had been closed for a long time. Across the room, Marie watched quietly. She didn't understand why. But she had a feeling. This meeting wasn't just a thank you. It was the beginning of something much bigger. And somewhere far outside that hospital room, people had already started asking questions about the accident. Questions that would soon reach her. Questions that would change everything. For the next few weeks, something unusual began to take shape inside the Caldwell estate. 3 afternoons a week, a modest city bus would stop near the long iron gates. Hannah would step off, her backpack bouncing lightly against her shoulders, her small hand tucked inside her mother's. The guards, who once barely noticed the staff, now greeted her by name. "Good afternoon, Miss Hannah." She always smiled back. Inside the mansion, the atmosphere had changed. The house was still grand. Still quiet. Still filled with expensive things that didn't belong to people like Marie and her daughter. But there was something warmer now. Something softer. Ethan Caldwell waited for those afternoons. His recovery from the accident was slow. Physical therapy. Medical appointments. Long hours in his study. But the time he spent with Hannah became the part of the week he never postponed. That Wednesday, sunlight filled his home office. The windows were open, and the sound of the ocean carried faintly through the room. Hannah sat across from him on a chair that had been specially adjusted to her height. A thick book rested on her lap. She was reading slowly, carefully, her finger following each line. "When Mary Lennox was sent to live with her uncle," she sounded out the words, then paused. "What does disagreeable mean?" Ethan turned his wheelchair toward her. "It means someone who isn't pleasant. Someone people don't enjoy being around." Hannah thought for a moment. "Like you were before?" Across the room, Marie looked up quickly, embarrassed. "Hannah, that's not polite." But Ethan raised a hand. "It's all right." To Marie's surprise, he smiled. "Was I disagreeable?" Hannah nodded honestly. "Mom said everyone was scared to talk to you. But I think you were just sad." The room went quiet. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then he said softly, "You're right." He turned his chair slightly toward the window. "I lost more than the ability to walk after my accident," he continued. "I lost control. I built my whole life believing I could control everything. My company. My future. My family." Hannah listened carefully. "But then things happened that I couldn't fix," he said. "And I didn't know who I was anymore." Hannah closed her book. "Like when you fell in the pool?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Yes. You couldn't control that," she said. "No," he admitted. Then he looked at her. "But you could." She blinked. "You changed what happened next." For a moment, neither of them spoke. From the doorway, another voice broke the silence. "Is that why you like her so much?" Parker stood there, his school backpack hanging from one shoulder. His tone wasn't angry, just uncertain. Ethan straightened slightly. "Parker, I didn't hear you come in." The boy stepped into the room, his eyes shifting between his father and Hannah. "Mom says dinner's at 7, he muttered. Then he hesitated, looking at Hannah again. There was curiosity in his expression. And something else. Maybe jealousy. Before anyone could respond, he turned and walked away. Hannah watched him leave. "He doesn't like me," she said quietly. "That's not true," Ethan said quickly. "Parker's had a hard time since my accident. Sometimes when people feel left out, they don't know how to act." Marie stepped forward gently. "We should head home soon," she said. But as Hannah picked up her bag, Ethan spoke again. "Hannah." She turned. "Would you try to be his friend?" She thought for a moment. "I'll try," she said. "But he has to try too." Ethan smiled. "That's fair." Later, as Marie and Hannah walked toward the bus stop outside the estate, the late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the road. Hannah kicked a small stone along the sidewalk. "Mom?" "Yes, baby?" "I think Parker is lonely." Marie looked down at her. "What makes you think that?" "He doesn't talk to anyone. And when he watches his dad with me, he looks sad. Like when I used to sit alone at lunch before Lily talked to me." Marie squeezed her hand. "You have a good heart, Hannah." That evening, after Hannah had gone to bed, Marie's phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. She hesitated before answering. "Hello. Marie Thompson?" "Yes. This is Jason Bennett from the Southampton Press. We spoke a few months ago about the Caldwell estate." Marie's stomach tightened. "I'm not comfortable talking to reporters." "I understand," he said calmly. "But this isn't about a story. It's about what happened at that pool." Her hand tightened around the phone. "What do you mean?" There was a pause on the other end. "I don't think it was an accident." Marie frowned. "That's ridiculous. I was there. My daughter pulled him out." "I'm not questioning her courage," Jason said. "I'm questioning the timing." Silence filled the line. "The company Ethan Caldwell just acquired," Jason continued. "There were investigations starting. Lawsuits. Ethics concerns about their artificial intelligence work. The day of the party was supposed to be a celebration to shift public attention." Marie felt her heart begin to race. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Jason replied quietly, "that a near-death story creates sympathy, especially when it involves a child hero." "That's insane," Marie said firmly. "He nearly died." "Did he?" Jason asked. "Or did someone need the world to think he did?" Marie didn't answer. Because for the first time since the rescue, a small seed of doubt entered her mind. "I'm not saying your daughter was part of anything," Jason added. "But the Caldwell family is powerful. And powerful people don't let a crisis go to waste." Marie swallowed. "We're not involved in their business." "You are now," he said softly. The line went quiet for a moment. "There's also something else," Jason continued. "That confidentiality agreement they gave you. I had a lawyer look at a copy from another staff member." Marie's heart skipped. "It's unusually restrictive," he said. "Whatever's happening inside that company, they don't want anyone talking." Marie ended the call a few seconds later. Her hands were shaking. Across the small apartment, she could hear Hannah talking in her sleep. Soft, peaceful, innocent. Marie walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street. She had accepted the Caldwell offer because it meant security, opportunity, a better future for her daughter. But now, for the first time, she wondered if they had stepped into something dangerous. And far away, in the Caldwell mansion, Ethan sat alone in his office, staring at a document on his desk. A confidential internal report. The title read, Project Oracle, Behavioral Prediction Expansion. And his hands were trembling. Ethan read the report twice. Then a third time. The words on the page felt heavier with every line. Behavioral prediction. Population tracking. Risk profiling. Government interest. Private security contracts. This wasn't the disaster prediction system he believed he had approved. This was something else. Something darker. His jaw tightened as he flipped to the authorization section. There were signatures. Executive approvals. And at the bottom of one expansion document, Vanessa Caldwell. For a long moment, he didn't move. Outside his office window, the ocean looked calm, endless, peaceful. Inside him, something was shifting. The accident 2 years ago had taken his mobility. The pool had taken something else. And now, for the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel before. Fear. Not for his company. For what it had become. The next afternoon, Hannah arrived as usual. She ran into the office with the simple excitement only a child could carry into a place full of adult problems. Mr. Caldwell, guess what? I got an A on my butterfly project. Ethan turned toward her. And just like that, the tension in his face softened. That's impressive, he said warmly. I knew you would. She placed the paper proudly on his desk. For a moment, he forgot about Oracle, about contracts, about signatures, about Vanessa. Hannah climbed into her chair and began reading from her book, her voice steady and focused. Marie watched from the corner, but something about Ethan's expression today was different. He wasn't just listening. He looked troubled. After the reading, Hannah packed her bag, and Ethan spoke quietly. Marie, could you stay a moment? Hannah walked out to the garden where Parker was sitting with his tablet. The door closed softly behind her. Ethan looked at Marie, his eyes serious. Has anyone contacted you outside the estate? Reporters? Investigators? Marie hesitated. There was no reason to lie. A reporter called me last night. Jason Bennett. Ethan didn't look surprised. What did he ask? He said the pool incident might not have been an accident. That your company was under pressure. Ethan leaned back slightly in his chair. The timing wasn't planned, he said quietly. I nearly died. Marie studied his face. She believed him. But something still felt unsettled. Is there trouble? She asked carefully. Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked toward the garden window. Hannah and Parker were sitting on the grass now. Hannah was showing him how to fold paper into a butterfly. Parker was actually smiling. Ethan spoke without looking back at Marie. I built my company to solve problems, he said. To make the world safer. Smarter. Better. His voice lowered. But somewhere along the way, other people saw different possibilities. Marie understood more than he said. Is Hannah in danger? She asked quietly. That question made him turn. No, he said firmly. I won't let anything touch her. There was something protective in his voice. Not the voice of a CEO. The voice of a man who owed a child his life. That evening, something unexpected happened. Parker knocked on the door of Ethan's office while Hannah was packing her bag. He stood there awkwardly. Do you want to see something? He asked Hannah. She looked at him, surprised. Okay. He led her down the hallway to the back terrace. From there, the marina could be seen in the distance, boats resting quietly in the late afternoon light. My dad used to take me sailing, Parker said. Hannah listened. He hasn't gone since the accident. She thought for a moment. Maybe he thinks he can't. Parker looked down. Yeah. Hannah turned back toward the house. Then maybe we should ask him. Parker blinked. You can't just ask him stuff like that. Hannah shrugged. I ask him stuff all the time." Before Parker could stop her, she walked back inside. Marie and Ethan looked up as she marched into the office. "Mr. Caldwell?" Ethan smiled slightly. "Yes. Do you still like sailing?" The question caught him off guard. For a moment, he didn't answer. "I used to," he said slowly. "Then you should go again," Hannah said simply. "Parker misses it." Silence filled the room. Parker stood in the doorway, frozen. Ethan looked from Hannah to his son, then back again. "I don't know if I can manage a boat anymore," he admitted. "You don't have to drive it," Hannah said. "You just have to be there." Something in Ethan's expression broke open. A memory. A regret. A father who had disappeared into his own loss. "I'll think about it," he said quietly. That night, after Marie and Hannah returned home, Marie's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Marie Thompson?" "Yes. This is Sandra Powell. I need to see you tomorrow morning. Early." Her tone was calm, but tight. "Is something wrong?" Marie asked. There was a pause. "Yes," Sandra said. "Federal investigators contacted the company today." Marie's heart skipped. "About the pool?" "No," Sandra replied. "About Project Oracle." Marie swallowed. "What does that have to do with us?" Sandra's voice lowered. "Right now, nothing." Another pause. "But if this becomes public, everyone connected to the Caldwell family will be under a microscope." Marie felt the walls of her small kitchen closing in. "What should I do?" "For now, nothing," Sandra said. "But Marie, if anyone asks you questions about Ethan, about the company, about Hannah's visits, you need to be careful." After the call ended, Marie sat at the table for a long time. Hannah was asleep in the next room. The apartment was quiet, simple, safe. But it didn't feel that way anymore. The world of the rich had reached into their lives. And it wasn't letting go. The next morning, as Marie walked Hannah toward the bus stop for school, she noticed a black SUV parked across the street. The engine was running. The windows were dark. A man sat inside, watching. Marie's steps slowed. "Mom?" Hannah asked. Marie forced a smile. "It's nothing, baby." But as the SUV pulled slowly away once they reached the corner, Marie felt something cold settle deep in her chest. This was no longer just a story about a girl who saved a life. Somewhere, something had started moving. And whatever was coming next was already watching them. Marie didn't mention the SUV to Hannah. Children had a way of sensing fear, even when no words were spoken. And the last thing Marie wanted was for her daughter to feel the weight that had been building in her own chest. But all morning, while she cleaned 2 small houses on the other side of town, the image stayed in her mind. Dark windows. Engine running. Watching. By noon, her phone buzzed. "Sandra. Where are you?" Sandra asked quietly. "Working. Finish and meet me at the Caldwell estate. Use the service entrance. Don't bring Hannah." Marie's grip tightened on the phone. "Is this about the investigators?" "Yes," Sandra said. Then, after a brief pause, she added, "And about Vanessa." The name alone brought tension. Vanessa Caldwell never did anything without purpose. When Marie arrived at the estate that afternoon, the atmosphere felt different. The gates were closed tighter than usual. Security was heavier. Staff moved quickly, speaking in low voices. Sandra met her near the service corridor. For the first time, the composed executive assistant looked tired. "They've opened a formal inquiry into Oracle," she said as they walked. "What does that mean?" Marie asked. "It means every contract, every decision, every executive is being reviewed. And it means there are people inside the company who are trying to protect themselves. They stopped near a small office. Sandra turned to her. Vanessa believes Ethan is becoming a liability. Marie frowned. Because of the investigation? Because of what he's doing, Sandra corrected. He's canceling contracts, shutting down programs, turning over internal files. He's trying to clean things up before the government forces it. Marie understood. He's telling the truth. Yes. Sandra's expression tightened. But the truth costs money, power, reputation. And Vanessa didn't build her life to lose any of those things. Marie felt a slow chill. What does that have to do with me? Sandra held her gaze. Vanessa thinks you're influencing him. Marie stared at her. That's ridiculous. Is it? Sandra asked gently. Ethan listens to Hannah. He's changed since the pool. He's talking about responsibility, ethics, slowing the company down. Sandra lowered her voice. In Vanessa's world, that looks like weakness. And she believes the change started with you and your daughter. Marie shook her head. We didn't do anything. I know that, Sandra said. But Vanessa doesn't see people the way you do. She sees leverage, influence, threats. Marie swallowed. What is she planning? Sandra hesitated. Publicly? Nothing yet. Privately, she's been asking questions. About your background, your finances, your situation. Marie's heart began to pound. That evening, when Hannah arrived at the estate for her visit, the mood inside the house felt heavier. But Hannah didn't notice. She ran into Ethan's office with her usual energy. Mr. Caldwell, we're learning about storms in science. Did you know hurricanes have names? Ethan smiled. I did. They're easier to track that way. She climbed into her chair and started telling him everything she'd learned, her hands moving as she talked. But today, he wasn't just smiling. He was studying her, like someone holding onto something fragile. After a while, Parker joined them, sitting quietly nearby. He didn't interrupt anymore. He just stayed close, listening, sometimes adding a comment. The distance between the two children was fading. And for the first time in years, Ethan's office didn't feel like a place of isolation. It felt like something close to a family. Later, as Marie waited in the hallway, she heard voices coming from the main study. Vanessa's voice. Sharp. Controlled. You're destroying everything we built. Ethan's response was calm, but firm. I'm fixing what we broke. You're handing our company to investigators. I'm handing them the truth. There was a long silence. Then Vanessa spoke again, quieter. Do you even understand what this costs us? Yes, Ethan said. And what about Parker? She pressed. What about his future? That's exactly what I'm thinking about. Marie stepped back before she could hear more. She didn't want to be there. Didn't want to be part of something that felt like a storm building inside the walls. When Hannah's visit ended, Ethan wheeled himself to the entry hall to say goodbye. Hannah, he said gently, I might be busy for a few days. Important meetings. But I'll see you soon. She nodded. That's okay. I'll bring you my storm project next time. He looked at her for a moment. Then he reached into his desk drawer and handed her a small plush butterfly. For good luck, he said. Hannah's face lit up. That night, after dinner, Marie sat at the kitchen table, sorting bills, trying to focus on normal life. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Marie Thompson? A woman's voice said. Yes. This is Linda Carter. I'm calling from Child Services. Marie froze. "We've received a concern regarding your living situation," the woman continued. "A concern?" Marie repeated slowly. There was a report suggesting financial instability and possible outside influence affecting your child's environment. Marie's heart dropped. "That's not true. We're required to schedule a home visit," the woman said calmly. "Just a routine evaluation." After the call ended, Marie sat there, unable to move. Only one person would think like that. Only one person would turn power into pressure. Vanessa. In the next room, Hannah sat on the floor with the plush butterfly, showing it to Parker over a video call. "Mr. Caldwell gave it to me," she said proudly. Parker smiled. "That means he really likes you. He doesn't give things to people." Marie stood in the doorway, watching her daughter laugh. And for the first time since the pool, she felt something heavier than fear. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was about control. About power. And if Vanessa Caldwell was willing to question her as a mother, then whatever storm was coming next was about to reach their door. Marie didn't sleep much that night. She lay awake on the narrow bed in their small apartment, staring at the ceiling while Hannah slept beside her, one arm wrapped around the plush butterfly. Child services. The words kept echoing in her mind. She had spent her whole life trying to stay invisible. Pay the bills. Keep a clean home. Keep her daughter safe. Stay out of trouble. Now someone was questioning whether she was fit to be a mother. And she knew exactly where that pressure was coming from. Morning came too quickly. Marie made breakfast as usual. Oatmeal. Toast. The same routine that gave their small life a sense of stability. Hannah sat at the table, swinging her legs. "Mom," she said quietly, "are you worried about something?" Marie forced a smile. "Just grown-up stuff, baby." Hannah studied her for a moment. Then she reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "It's okay," she said softly. "You always fix things." Marie swallowed hard. Sometimes, children had more faith in you than you had in yourself. Late that afternoon, the knock came. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just official. Marie opened the door to find Linda Carter standing there, holding a folder. The woman's expression was professional but not cold. "Ms. Thompson," she said gently, "I know this is uncomfortable. I'm just here to ask a few questions and make sure everything is okay." Marie stepped aside. The apartment was small, clean, simple. Linda walked slowly through the living space, taking quiet notes. "Does Hannah spend time alone?" she asked. "No." "Any outside financial support?" Marie hesitated. "Yes. Her visits to the Caldwell estate are compensated. It helps with school and living expenses." Linda nodded. "Has anyone ever pressured you to keep Hannah involved there?" Marie thought carefully before answering. "No one forced us. That was the truth." But it didn't feel like the whole truth anymore. In the bedroom, Hannah sat on the floor, coloring. Linda knelt beside her. "Hi, Hannah. Do you like living here with your mom?" Hannah looked up, confused. "Of course. Does anyone ever make you go somewhere you don't want to go?" Hannah shook her head. "I like visiting Mr. Caldwell. He's nice. And Parker needs me." Linda smiled slightly. After a few more questions, she closed her folder. "Everything looks stable here," she said quietly to Marie near the door. "But I'll be honest. The report that came in was detailed. Someone is watching your situation closely." Marie's voice was tight. "Can you tell me who filed it?" Linda hesitated. "No. But I can tell you this. These kinds of reports usually come from someone with resources." After she left, Marie closed the door slowly. Her hands were shaking. That evening, Hannah had another visit scheduled. Marie almost cancelled. But something inside her said running would only make things worse. When they arrived at the estate, the tension was impossible to ignore. Security was heavier. Staff avoided eye contact. Sandra met them near the entrance. "She filed for preliminary review of your guardianship," Sandra said quietly to Marie. Marie felt the air leave her lungs. "She's trying to take Hannah?" "No," Sandra said quickly. "She's trying to prove you're unstable or financially dependent on the family. If she succeeds, she could limit your access to the estate. Limit Hannah's visits." Marie understood. If Hannah stayed away, Ethan would lose the one person he trusted most, and Vanessa would regain control. Inside the office, Ethan was waiting. Hannah ran to him, holding up a drawing. "It's a hurricane," she announced. "But this one doesn't destroy houses. It just blows away bad people." Ethan laughed softly. "I like that kind of storm." But when he looked at Marie, his expression changed. He could see the worry in her face. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Marie told him everything. The report, the home visit, the investigation. Ethan's hands tightened on the arms of his wheelchair. "I'll handle it." Marie shook her head. "This is already because of your family." He looked at her carefully. "You think Vanessa did this?" "I know she did." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan said something quietly. "She's scared." Marie blinked. "Of what?" "Losing control," he replied. "The company. The investigation. Me." He paused. "And she knows the only thing I won't compromise on anymore is Hannah." The words hung between them. Not business. Not reputation. Not money. A child. From the hallway, Parker's voice called out, "Hannah, come see this." She ran out, leaving the adults alone. Ethan lowered his voice. "I won't let anyone touch your family," he said. Marie met his eyes. "You don't control everything anymore, Ethan." He didn't argue, because for the first time in his life, he knew that was true. Outside in the garden, Parker and Hannah were sitting on the grass, watching the sky. "There's a storm coming," Parker said. The clouds were gathering over the ocean. Hannah leaned back on her hands. "Storms don't last forever," she said. Parker glanced at her. "How do you know?" "Because after storms," she said simply, "things grow." Inside the house, Sandra walked quickly down the hallway toward Ethan's office. Her face was pale. She didn't knock. "Ethan," she said urgently. "Federal agents just arrived." The room went still. "They're requesting immediate access to internal Oracle servers," she continued. "And Vanessa is already downstairs with them." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. The storm had arrived. And this time, it wasn't outside. For a long moment, Ethan didn't move. Through the window of his office, he could see dark clouds gathering over the ocean. The air had that heavy stillness that comes right before a storm breaks. Then he opened his eyes. "Bring them up," he said quietly. Sandra hesitated. "Vanessa is already with them." "I know," Ethan replied. "Bring them up anyway." Downstairs, the tension had already filled the house. Two federal agents stood in the main hall, calm and professional, their presence sharp against the polished luxury of the mansion. Vanessa stood beside them, perfectly composed, her voice controlled, her posture confident. "This way," she said, gesturing toward the private offices. "My husband will cooperate fully." But when the elevator doors opened and Ethan rolled out to meet them, something in the room shifted. He didn't look like a man under pressure. He looked like a man who had already made a decision. "I'll take you to the servers," he said calmly. Everything you're looking for is already prepared. Vanessa turned to him sharply. What do you mean, prepared? Ethan didn't look at her. I've authorized full access. Internal communications. Contracts. Financial transfers. All of it. The silence that followed was heavy. One of the agents nodded. That will make this process much faster, Mr. Caldwell. Vanessa stepped closer to him, her voice low and tight. You're handing them everything? Without legal review? Ethan finally met her eyes. Yes. Her expression hardened. You're destroying this family. His answer came quietly. No, he said. I'm trying to save what's left of it. Upstairs, Marie sat in the office while Hannah and Parker waited near the window, watching the rain begin to fall over the garden. Neither child understood the full weight of what was happening. But they felt it. Children always do. Parker turned to Hannah. Do you think everything's going to be okay? Hannah thought for a moment. Then she said softly, Mr. Caldwell told me something once. What? That sometimes when things break, it's because they were built the wrong way. Parker nodded slowly. Downstairs, the investigation moved quickly. Documents were reviewed. Servers accessed. Evidence transferred. And with every file opened, the truth became clearer. Contracts approved without Ethan's knowledge. Private negotiations. Surveillance agreements that went far beyond anything ethical. All authorized through executive channels controlled by Vanessa. By evening, the agents returned to the main hall. Mrs. Caldwell, one of them said carefully, we'll need you to come with us to answer some questions. Vanessa didn't react immediately. She looked at Ethan. For the first time, there was no control in her expression. Only disbelief. You chose them over me, she said quietly. Ethan's voice was calm, but there was sadness in it. I chose what was right. She let out a short, bitter laugh. All of this, she said, gesturing around the house, came from ambition, from power, from not being weak. Then her eyes shifted toward the staircase, where Hannah stood beside Parker. And you threw it away because a poor child made you feel something. Ethan looked at Hannah, then back at Vanessa. No, he said softly. I changed because she reminded me I was still human. The agents escorted Vanessa toward the door. She didn't look back. The rain fell steadily through the night. By morning, the news had spread. Investigations. Executive misconduct. Corporate restructuring. Ethan stepped down as CEO and agreed to cooperate fully. The company survived, but under new leadership, with strict ethical oversight. The mansion grew quieter, simpler, and for the first time, it no longer felt like a place built on pressure and performance. Weeks later, on a clear autumn afternoon, a small sailboat moved slowly across the calm water near the harbor. Ethan sat secured in a modified seat at the center. Parker stood beside him, hands steady on the wheel. You're doing it, Ethan said with a small smile. Parker grinned. I remember how. At the front of the boat, Hannah leaned over the side, laughing as the wind played with her hair. Marie sat nearby, watching them. The air smelled like salt and sunlight and something else. Peace. Ethan turned his chair slightly toward Marie. You know, he said quietly, I spent my whole life thinking success meant control. Marie smiled. And now? He looked at the children. Now I know success is the people who stay when everything else falls apart. The boat drifted gently across the water. No reporters. No executives. No power plays. Just a father, a son, a mother, and a little girl who never saw the difference between rich and poor when someone needed help. As the sun began to set, Hannah came running back. Look, she shouted. Butterflies. A small group of monarchs floated over the water, moving south for the winter. Parker laughed. They always know where they're going. Hannah nodded. Because they trust the way. Ethan watched them quietly. Then he spoke, almost to himself. The day I fell into that pool, I thought I was drowning. He looked at Hannah. But the truth is, I'd been drowning for years. He paused. And a little girl didn't just save my life. His voice softened. She saved my soul. That evening, as the sky turned gold over the water, the four of them walked back toward the small harbor house together. No mansion. No empire. Just a life built slowly, honestly, one day at a time. Because in the end, it wasn't wealth that saved them. It wasn't power. It wasn't status. It was kindness. It was courage. It was the simple truth that the strongest people aren't the richest ones. They're the ones who still choose love when they have every reason not to. And sometimes, the person who changes your life forever is a small child who refuses to walk past someone who's drowning. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to subscribe and become part of our community. And tell us in the comments, which region of the world are you watching from today?